The police were pounding on my front gate, and not just 1 or 2 cars, but 4 squad cars lined up at the entrance of my ranch. Sirens blaring, lights flashing like I just pulled off a heist. One officer barked through a loudspeaker, "Step away from the gate. This is an official order." All I'd done was put up a metal cattle gate, the very same one I'd had for years. The same gate I had to reinforce just last night after someone rammed it with a pickup truck. But this time was different. This time, the homeowners association the HOA I wasn't even a member of, had sued me. They claimed I'd blocked public access to a road they'd secretly built right through my private ranch. A road that didn't even exist legally 3 months ago. A road that cut straight through my livestock pasture, scaring my animals and dividing my land in half like I didn't even own it. Now, they were using the police to force me to open my gate, accusing me of endangering public access. I stood firm, raised both hands, and calmly shouted back, "This is private property. That road is illegal." Another officer yelled, "Sir, unlock the gate or we will force entry." And that's when I said the words that changed everything. Not only will I not open it, but every single member of that HOA is now banned from stepping foot on my land. The officers froze. But it was too late because at that exact moment, my wife stepped outside holding a thick folder of documents. Her eyes were steady, her voice calm as she said, "I suggest you all take a look at the property lines before you make a mistake you'll regret." And that's when everything began to unravel. Let me rewind a bit. My name is Jack Coleman. I'm 56, a retired firefighter, and I've lived on this 100-acre ranch in Texas for almost 20 years. My wife Emily is a paralegal as sharp as a tack and twice as determined. We moved out here after I retired early from a spinal injury, searching for peace, quiet, and space to raise horses and live with dignity and kindness. I keep to myself, pay my taxes, donate hay to local animal shelters during dry spells, and every spring, I invite kids from the nearby middle school to come learn about ranch life. My land isn't for sale. So when a group of well-dressed newcomers moved into a subdivision built right next door and formed an HOA, I paid them no mind. After all, they had their gated community. I had my ranch. That was until I saw bulldozers digging on my property. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe someone clearing brush, maybe county workers lost their way. But no, they were paving a road. When I limped out there from my old injury, 3 men in orange vests and an HOA board member named Curtis looked at me like I was trespassing. "Can I help you?" Curtis asked, his smug tone turning my stomach. I pointed at the half-built road cutting through my lower pasture. "What the hell is that doing on my land?" He smiled tight-lipped. "This is a new access road. We voted on it. It connects the subdivision's east entrance to Route 17A better for emergency vehicles, school buses. It's part of our community development plan." I laughed, thought it was a joke, but Curtis was serious. "You should be glad it'll raise your property value." I stared him down. "You didn't ask me, didn't notify me, didn't get any permit. This is my land." He shrugged. "Eminent domain laws, Jack. Look it up." He was wrong. I did look it up. Emily dug deeper at printing maps, deeds, property surveys, GPS markers from the county land office. That road wasn't anywhere on an official plan, and no easement, no approval, no vote, nothing. They illegally built a road on private property and then told me I had to keep it open. So I did what any self-respecting landowner would do. I installed a reinforced gate with a camera and a padlock, shutting that so-called road down. Then I posted signs, "Private property, no trespassing, violators will be prosecuted." That very night, someone drove their car right through the gate and crashed into my fence, injuring one of my mares. The next morning, I found a note on my mailbox: "Enjoy your little protest. You'll be hearing from our lawyers." And hear from them I did. 2 days later, the HOA hit me with a lawsuit, claiming I was violating their right-of-way. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, running my fingers over old photographs of my dad, who passed. I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, tracing the photos of my late dad, wondering how things had come to this. We had always taught our kids about kindness, respect, and standing firm that good people do the right thing even when no one's watching. But what do you do when others lie, cheat, and bully openly in the daylight. Here's what I did. I told Emily we weren't backing down. We hired a land surveyor, consulted a real estate attorney from San Antonio, and I began meticulously documenting everything: dates, times, photos, license plates, videos of every car that drove through. I also started digging into the HOA bylaws. Turns out, their authority ends exactly at their property line. But Curtis and his crew didn't slow down. They doubled their efforts, calling emergency meetings, distributing flyers labeling me a public threat, and even went to the local paper with a smear campaign titled, "Man Blocks School Route in Ranch Standoff." Emily wanted to respond publicly, but I told her, no, we keep our heads down and let the facts do the talking. Then came today, the day they sent the cops. They probably thought I'd cave. Instead, they were about to learn something new. I hadn't just banned them from my land, I was about to shut them down for good, because in my hand was more than just proof of ownership. It was a court-issued cease and desist order, signed by a judge that very morning. Just as the officer raised his hand to command the gate open, a black SUV rolled in behind the police car, someone Curtis definitely hadn't expected. This arrival was about to make everything 10 times worse for him. The SUV sped in, tires crunching over gravel like thunder. It had no police markings, but the way the patrol officers straightened at the sight told me all I needed to know. Curtis, standing behind the officers with his smug shirt and whole lanyard, paled like he'd seen a ghost. The driver's door swung open and out stepped my wife Emily. But this time, she wasn't just holding papers, she was flanked by 2 U.S. Marshals. Behind them came Judge Danielsa, an older African-American man with thick glasses, a booming voice, and zero tolerance for nonsense. The whole yard fell silent. "Who's in charge here?" the judge asked, eyes sharp, scanning the officers and Curtis. "I am," one deputy answered. "No, you're not," Judge Daniels snapped. "I am, and I have an emergency injunction that declares this land private, this road illegal, and the HOA in direct violation of state law," he said. Curtis opened his mouth to speak, but the judge cut him off like a razor. "Your Honor, I don't want to hear it. Your board, and anyone who sets foot on this land again will be held in contempt of court and face immediate arrest. Clear?" Curtis looked ready to faint. The officers stepped back awkwardly. One tried to mumble about conflicting orders, but Judge Daniels waved the court papers in his face. "This is a signed land deed. This is a survey. This aerial footage from the county shows the road wasn't here 3 months ago. You've been misled, officer. Now it's your job to fix this." Then the judge turned to me. "Mr. Coleman, anything else?" I stepped forward slowly. "Yes, Your Honor. I have video evidence of home members trespassing even after legal warnings. I've identified Curtis and 2 others for vandalism, including a hit-and-run that injured my livestock." Emily handed a USB drive to one of the marshals. Curtis tried to slip behind the group, but a marshal barked, "Stay right where you are. You're not going anywhere." But let me take you back to where this all really began, because what just happened is only the middle of the story. It started 7 months ago, the day I spotted real estate developers camped along my west fence line. They were walking the property edge, carrying blueprints and tablets, talking and laughing loudly. One of them waved when he saw me on horseback. "Nice spot you got here, old-timer," he called out. "We're laying plans for the new HOA community. You'll love it, it'll raise your property value." I said nothing, just stared, a sick feeling settling in my gut. Later, Emily called the county records office and uncovered the truth. A firm from Austin had purchased the 400 acres next door and subdivided it into lots. They moved quickly. In just 3 months, Ridgeway Estates sprang up, houses popping up like mushrooms after a rainstorm. Fancy gates, solar-powered street lamps, and winding driveways replaced the quiet countryside. Suddenly, my peaceful rural life was bordered by joggers, dog walkers, and HOA board meetings. But I didn't complain. Live and let live, right? I skipped their meetings, didn't file noise complaints, and never reported the kids tossing balls over my fence. I simply tended my ranch and kept my peace. That was, until the day they decided my land was theirs. Curtis showed up at my door, wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey neighbor," he said, "we've got a plan to improve traffic flow and cut emergency response times. The community voted on an access road, a shortcut from the east exit to the main highway. It'd be great if you'd let us use a bit of your land. You've got plenty of space, it won't bother you. I looked him dead in the eye and said flatly, absolutely not. He blinked, like I'd insulted him. This road benefits everyone, he said. Don't be selfish. You're not even using that field. That field's where my horses graze. I snapped. It's private property. You don't get to decide what I do with it. Curtis chuckled. Maybe not today, but I know people. This community is growing. Things change. He left, and I thought it was done. I was wrong. A week later, bulldozers showed up. They claimed to be surveying, but they brought heavy equipment. I called the sheriff, who promised to look into it. By the time he did, half the road was paved. I filed complaints and no response. Emily dug deeper and uncovered something terrifying. The HOA had submitted forged documents to the county claiming an easement through abandoned land, which was actually my ranch. They had fabricated maps and declared my property non-existent. I couldn't believe it. We sent letters, emails, legal threats, and nothing worked. They ignored everything. Then came the Carsa kids racing across my fields, strangers wandering into my barn thinking it was a clubhouse. One guy even asked if he could hold a wedding on my open land. Emily broke down crying one night. This is everything we worked for, Jack. I held her tight and told her we'd fight. We beefed up our defenses, reinforced fences, motion-activated lights, cameras, gates. Then someone ran their car right through the gate and injured my horse. That's when I knew this wasn't just a property dispute. This was a war. Emily went full paralegal Madia, drafting letters, gathering evidence, researching land laws. I recorded every car, every conversation, every delivery driver who wandered in thinking they belonged. That's how we built our case. So when the police arrived, I wasn't shocked. What they didn't expect was that my wife had already filed a cease and desist order that morning, and Judge Daniels had signed it immediately. With the law on our side and Curtis frozen in front of a U.S. Marshal, I thought maybe, just maybe, the storm was over. But as the marshal escorted Curtis to his car, one of them paused, frowning at a piece of paper. Jack, he said, raising an eyebrow, you're going to want to see this. He handed me a new MAPA development plan showing not only the road through my pasture, but a community park, a pond, and future expansion zones labeled Phase 2, Phase 3, and a clubhouse area. All of it was mapped on my land. I glanced at Emily. She was already dialing her phone. I knew this fight was far from over. I stared at the map in my hands like it was a ticking time bomb. Emily's voice was low and sharp, a warning. This isn't just about the road. They're planning to take your entire property. Not just the horse pasture or the shortcut, but the barn, the workshop, even our family's old oak tree where we buried your father's ashes. Everything was drawn out like a mall blueprint. A park benches here, walking trails there, a playground right where my cattle corral stood. The marshal leaned in, tapping the corner of the map. This was filed with the city planning office last week. I felt my heart drop. Filed as what? I asked. Community expansion zone, he replied. Emily nearly dropped her phone. That's a lie. Jack's land isn't vacant, it's registered, taxed, and in use. The judge nearby exhaled deeply, pinching the bridge of his nose. This is bigger than a land dispute. We could be dealing with civil fraud. Possibly criminal. You need a federal land attorney. Now, Curtis, who had been silent during the questioning, suddenly muttered, "This is all a mistake. Our documents were filed by the previous project manager. It's not my fault. I was just following the expansion plan." No one believed him, because Curtis wasn't just a board member, he was also a silent. Curtis wasn't just some random board member, he was a silent partner in the real estate group behind Ridgeway Estates. Emily had uncovered that detail during her research, and now, with a judge and 2 U.S. Marshals standing there, we had an audience you don't lie to. Still, I kept my cool. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my land back, my peace, my space, to keep my animals safe, to live my life. Then the judge said something I'll never forget. "Jack," he said, "you have every legal right not only to block access to your property but to seek restitution. But you need to understand that it won't end quietly. These people, they'll try again." He was right. The very next morning, I woke to find my fences cut again. Not just one gate this time, but 4 sections of barbed wire, cleanly sliced with bolt cutters. My horses had wandered dangerously close to the HOA road before a kind neighbor managed to corral them back. And the cameras, all disabled. Someone had spray painted over the lenses. They were sending a message: we were at war. At around 7 a.m., Emily stormed into the house holding one of our no trespassing signs ripped in half, with the words "This isn't over" scrawled across the back in black marker. "I'm calling the sheriff again," she said, furious, "and I'm getting the media involved. They don't know who they're messing with." I stopped her. "Not yet," I said. I had a better plan. I pulled out a folder I'd been quietly putting together. While Emily built our legal case, I'd been building a different kind of quasi-community case. I had statements from neighbors, photos of hoe trucks parked on my land, video clips from other Texas ranchers who dealt with the same shady tactics, and best of all, a whistleblower. One of the construction workers who helped pave the road through my ranch had reached out anonymously. He sent me screenshots of messages from Curtis and other board members joking about how easy it was to steal land from an old cowboy. That same worker sent me a PDFA, an internal memo bragging that by the time anyone noticed, the road would be done, and the county wouldn't bother reversing it. They were counting on me giving up. Instead, I was about to blow it wide open. The next day, Emily filed a formal lawsuit in civil court against the Ridgeway HOA for property damage, unlawful trespassing, attempted land seizure, and emotional distress. We also filed a complaint with the Texas Attorney General's office. Then I did one more thing. I posted everything of photos, maps, videos, names online, first Reddit, then Facebook, then the local news Facebook group where half the town gets their news. I wrote the truth plainly. HOA built illegal road through my ranch, then sued me for blocking it. Now they want the rest of my land. The post went viral overnight. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments, most importantly a support. People sent me stories from their own towns. Former HOA members offered legal advice. Ranchers volunteered to help fix fences. A local reporter asked to do a feature. I wasn't alone anymore. But it didn't get easier. 2 nights later, I caught a group of teenagers, probably from the HOA neighborhood, sneaking onto my land carrying cans of gasoline. They planned to set my barn on fire. I had them on camera. I called the sheriff. Minutes later, they caught the kids hiding behind my hay bales. They were arrested. And guess what? One of them was Curtis's son. You'd think that'd be the end of it, right? Nope. The very next day, I got a thick envelope in the mail. Another lawsuit. This time, the HOA accused me of harassment. They claimed I was inciting public hatred, endangering children, and creating a hostile environment for Ridgeway residents. I stared at the papers, jaw clenched. Emily said, "They're not done." Emily said, "They're throwing everything at us, hoping we'll crack." But I didn't. I already had my next move planned. I was going to legally ban the entire HOA from ever stepping foot on my property permanently and with the full force of the law. Judge Daniels was about to grant me something most landowners only dream of, an exclusive protective easement order. This wasn't just about forbidding access. It would give me the power to fence off every inch of my land, place permanent blockades, and have any trespasser arrested on site. The hearing was scheduled for tomorrow. Then, I got a call from my lawyer with one last twist. The HOA had tried to tamper with county records. They'd been caught. And now the district attorney was involved. Someone, possibly Curtis himself, was facing criminal charges. Just as I started to feel some relief, a loud bang echoed from behind the house. I ran out back and nearly stopped breathing. My barn, the same barn where we kept the horses, feed, and gyro, was engulfed in flames. The fire reached high into the night sky, angry red fingers licking the darkness and turning my peaceful ranch into a war zone. My barn, my father's barn. "Call 911, I shouted, sprinting toward the fire with old fireman instincts kicking in. Emily was already on the phone, her voice shaking as she gave our address to dispatch. "It's our barn. It's fully engulfed. The animals," said Jack. "The horses." I didn't hesitate. I burst into the barn, a wet towel pressed over my face. My eyes stung, smoke burned my lungs, and visibility was near zero. But I could hear the aim of my horses screaming in terror. I opened stall after stall, slapping the rear of each horse, urging them toward the open back gate. "Go, get out!" Coughing so hard I could barely breathe, I watched as they bolted into the open pasture, hooves pounding the earth like thunder. Ember, my oldest mare, was limping and scared, but she made it. I wrapped a lead around her neck and guided her out just before a beam crashed down behind us. We barely made it. I turned to see half the barn roof cave in. Emily ran to me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders, coughing and crying. "You're okay, you're okay, you got them all out." I couldn't even respond. I just stared at the burning wreckage and thought of my dada who built that barn with his own hands back in 1973. Now it was ashes. The fire department arrived 10 minutes later, too late to save anything, but managed to stop the flames from spreading to the feed shed and tool garage. When the sheriff showed up, he pulled me aside. "We found accelerants," he said quietly. "Gasoline." This was arson. Emily went pale. "You don't think it was the HOA, do you?" The sheriff looked grim. "We arrested Curtis's son before. Remember, there have been multiple trespassing reports from that neighborhood. I can't say for sure yet, but we've opened a full investigation. I suggest you get a lawyer on standby." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Deep down, I already knew this wasn't just about land anymore. This was personal. But let me be clear. I wasn't looking for revenge. That wasn't me. I'm a man of principle and peace. I only wanted justice and protection for my land, my wife, my animals, and that's exactly what I got. The next morning, we appeared before Judge Daniels again, this time with a full protective easement request and a fire investigation report. I stood in that courtroom, soot still on my boots, Emily holding my hand, never looking more determined. Curtis was there too, but this time, he didn't look smug. He looked scared. Before the hearing began, the DA's assistant entered the room and handed a sealed file to the judge. He read it silently, then looked up. "Mr. Coleman," he said, "this court now has video footage showing 3 individuals, 2 HOA board members, entering your property the night of the fire, carrying gas cans and wearing masks." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Curtis's lawyer went pale. The judge continued, "The footage also shows a 3rd individual, your son, Mr. Curtis, pouring gasoline around the barn. I am issuing warrants for all 3. Curtis's mouth dropped open. "Yeah, I didn't authorize that," he stammered. But it didn't matter. Judge Daniels banged his gavel. "This hearing is suspended." "Curtis Williams, you are under investigation for conspiracy to commit arson and fraudulent land seizure." 2 officers stepped forward and placed Curtis in handcuffs. Emily exhaled sharply beside me. I squeezed her hand. It wasn't over, but things were turning. Later that afternoon, we received the ruling. The court had officially granted us a permanent protective land easement order. That meant no one from Ridgeway HOA could ever set foot on our property again. The court's ruling was clear. Any attempt by the Ridgeway HOA to use our land would lead to immediate arrest. All road access through my property was permanently revoked, and I was authorized to build legal blockades anywhere along the perimeter. I was also advised to pursue a civil case for damages, but something else weighed heavier on my mind. I went home and walked the fence line with Emily. The barn still smoldered, its charred beams scattered across the ground like broken bones, but my horses were safe, and the land was quiet once more. The road that had once sliced through my pasture was now blocked off by a sturdy steel gate and boulders we hauled in ourselves. But one thing lingered in my mind, the look in Curtis's eyes as the handcuffs snapped shut. Disbelief, like he couldn't understand why this was happening, like he was the victim. That's the thing about people like him, they don't see land, they see opportunity. They don't see legacy, they see leverage. And when told no, they don't listen, they just try to take what they want. But I had built this life with my own hands. No man, no HOA, no forged document or crooked deal was going to steal it from me, especially not when I had something stronger than power. I had truth, and I had an entire community behind me. Even after the arrests and the court order, something didn't feel right. 2 nights later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a drone photo of my ranch with a red X drawn over the house and one chilling sentence scrawled in marker. "You're not safe yet." I sat at the kitchen table, holding the photo as the overhead light flickered. My fingers trembled, and not with fear, but with fury. Emily sat frozen across from me, her eyes locked on the red X covering our roof. The message wasn't just a threat, it was a warning. Someone was still out there, thinking this wasn't over. "Jack," Emily whispered, breaking the silence, "this means someone's watching us right now." I nodded slowly. "And they're not done." The local sheriff arrived within the hour after I called him to show the package. He inspected the envelope. No return address, no fingerprints on the photo. Whoever sent it wore gloves. Leaning against the counter, arms crossed, he said, "I'd bet anything it's someone still tied to the HOA. Maybe someone scared of what Curtis might say now that he's cooperating." That made sense. Curtis had flipped 2 days ago under pressure, facing felony charges. He agreed to cooperate. He'd already told investigators about a secret HOA slush fund, money raised from fake emergency repair fees, funneled into bribes, private contractors, and land buyout attempts. He claimed he wasn't the mastermind and that someone else on the board was pulling the strings. He hadn't given a name yet, but the drone photo was proof. Someone still wanted to scare us into silence. That night, Emily locked every door and window. We took turns keeping watch in shifts. I sat by the front window, clutching my old rifle, the one my father gave me after my first rodeo win at 17. Around 2:40 a.m., the motion lights behind the barn flashed on. I bolted out the back door, flashlight and rifle in hand, heart pounding like a drum. And what I found was a drone hovering just 30 feet above my roof, quietly blinking. Without hesitation, I raised my rifle and fired. Crack! The drone sparked, spun, and crashed into the gravel beside the gate. Emily came running. "What happened?" I held up the smoking wreckage. "They were watching." We called the sheriff again. This time, he took the broken drone straight to evidence and promised to trace it through the serial numbers. The next morning, my lawyer called. "Jack, you're not going to believe this." I braced myself. The HOA president, Sandra Beck, just fled town. "Sandra?" I blinked. "The woman who brought cookies to the first HOA picnic and claimed she wanted to beautify the community?" "That's the one," he said. "She emptied her HOA account to nearly $120,000 and disappeared." Turns out, Sandra wasn't just the face of the HOA. She was the one who hired the private contractors to pave that illegal road through my property. She signed the altered county documents. She organized the fraudulent vote to label my land as vacant. Curtis was just her puppet. And now that he was squealing, she was gone. But she hadn't covered her tracks well. Within days, a federal investigator followed her trail of bank transfers, emails, phone logs, all leading back to her. The Dodge was preparing charges. Meanwhile, Emily and I made a choice. We would hold a town meeting, and not just for us, but for every rancher, homeowner, and retiree in the area who'd faced this kind of HOA overreach. We rented the local Grange Hall, printed flyers, and sent out invitations. Over 80 people showed up. Some were ranchers like me, tired of new developments creeping onto their land. Some were single parents fined for letting their kids' bikes sit on the porch. Some were veterans, retirees, teachers, people bullied into silence. We shared our story: the illegal road, the forged maps, the arson, the drone. People were furious, but they were also inspired. By the end of the meeting, we'd formed a new alliance, Residents Against HOA Overreach. We created a petition demanding the county audit every HOA in the district. Within a week, within days, our petition had gathered over 1,500 signatures. The story hit local news, then state news, and before long, national headlines. Suddenly, HOA Karen culture wasn't just a joke on Reddit. It was a serious problem with serious people fighting back. But despite the legal victory, the arrests, and the swelling community support, something still gnawed at me. One night, I got a call from Curtis. It was from the county jail. I almost didn't answer, but I did. His voice was low, worn down. "Jack, I just wanted to say a broken bar. I was wrong. You didn't deserve any of this." I stayed silent. Then he added, "But I wasn't lying when I said Sandra wasn't the only one. There's another, the real person behind the fund, behind the threats. I only helped because they promised me I'd be rich." I gripped the phone tighter. "Who, Curtis?" He hesitated. "You already met him. Remember that guy in the blue blazer at the first Ridgeway barbecue? Troy Maddox. He's the developer who sold Ridgeway the land. He's also the one who forged the easement papers. He's dangerous, Jack. If he finds out I told you, he'll come after me and maybe you, too." I hung up slowly. That was a name I'd heard before. Troy Maddox, a flashy, smooth-talking businessman who bragged about turning dirt into diamonds. He drove a black Mercedes and wore sunglasses even indoors. I'd seen him twice, once at the HOA's launch party, and once parked outside my fence months before all this started. He had big connections. If he was really the puppet master behind this scheme, then Curtis and Sandra were just pawns. This wasn't just about my land, it was about every ranch, every field, every open space left in this part of Texas. The threat wasn't over, it was just beginning. That evening, standing by my burned barn watching the sun set over my battle-scarred land, I realized something. They might have burned my barn, but they just lit a fire in me. I was going after Troy Maddox next, and I wasn't going to stop until every stolen acre was reclaimed. His name echoed in my mind like a gunshot in a canyon. Curtis and Sandra were loud, flashy, and easy to spot. But Troy, he was the shadow behind the curtain, the real estate shark with $1 million smile and a handshake that probably signed more lies than contracts. I still remembered the first time I saw him. It was at the Ridgeway Welcome Barbecue, over a year ago. Before this nightmare began, he walked up to me with a plastic cup of lemonade, dressed in a navy blazer, no tie, and a Rolex that caught the Texas sun like diamonds. "Jack, right?" he said, offering his hand. "Heard this land's been in your family for generations. Real nice spread you've got." I shook his hand stiffly. "Appreciate that," I said. He smiled. "Look, I know you're probably tired of people trying to buy you out, but I'm not like them. I'm a problem solver, so if you ever get tired of fences and horses and lawsuits, give me a call." That smiley, the kind that makes you check if your wallet's still in your back pocket. Back then, I didn't think much of it, but now I knew he wasn't just watching from a distance. He was pulling every string. Curtis confirmed it in his confession. Sandra admitted it before she fled town. And that drone photo with the red X? That was Troy's signature, a warning. He wanted me off this land. So I decided it was time to hit back. I called a friend, Will Johnson, a retired federal investigator turned private detective. Will owed me a favor. Years ago, I helped save his horses during a barn fire when he was out of town. I told him everything: the road, the fake maps, the arrests, the drone. Will agreed to dig into Troy Maddox. In just 3 days, he came back with a mountain of dirt. "Troy isn't just shady," Will said. "He's a criminal." Turns out, Troy had been sued 6 times in 3 different states for land misrepresentation, illegal development, zoning fraud, and bribery. He'd paid hush money to 2 former board members in Colorado and Nevada. He bulldozed protected wetlands, got fined, and never paid. But here's the kicker. He just filed a new proposal with the state for a luxury green living compound on my land, even after the court ruled in my favor, even after the fire, even after his board members were behind bars. Troy was betting I'd walk away. He was wrong. Emily and I filed a new motion in court, not just for civil damages, but for a restraining land injunction against Troy Maddox himself. Our lawyer, Michelle Cortez, a hard-nosed litigator from Dallas with a voice like a buzzsaw, walked into court with a thick binder and a mission. "This man," she told the judge, "has committed fraud, violated environmental codes, threatened a landowner, and used stolen HOA funds to fuel an illegal development campaign." Troy had a lawyer, too, a slick suit, an alligator-skin briefcase, a man paid to smile and say, "My client denies all." A broken bar. Troy's lawyer was all polished smiles and slick denials. "My client denies all allegations." But when Michelle slammed Will's dossier on the judge's desk, and we handed over Curtis's signed confession, it was game over. Judge Daniels issued an immediate court order. Troy Maddox must cease all development activities in Ridgeway. He was banned from setting foot on my property or contacting me in any way. Every future zoning application tied to him would now be flagged for review. Troy stood there, blinking, stunned. Then he looked at me, not with fear, but with pure rage, like I'd humiliated him in front of the whole world. As he walked out of the courtroom, he muttered under his breath, "This isn't the end." I smiled. "For you, it is, But just when we thought we could finally breathe, another blow came. The county emailed us a notification. Ridgeway HOA has filed a new petition for emergency public access through Coleman Ranch, claiming vital community access requires temporary reinstatement of the previous road. Emily screamed when she read it. They're trying to gain a broken bar after everything. I called our lawyer, furious. How is this even allowed? She sighed. HOAs have money, and money stalls the law. They're hoping to drag this out until you're exhausted or bankrupt. That night, I sat in the dark with Ember, my old mare, brushing her mane as she nuzzled my shoulder. I made a decision. I was going to finish this once and for all. No more lawsuits. No more waiting. The next morning, I started calling the media. I gave interviews, posted every document, video, and confession on social media. I invited news crews to tour the ranch. I even launched a GoFundMe called Protect Our Land, Protect Our Future. Donations poured in from across the country. People were fed up and tired of bullies in suits stealing land and silencing voices. Then something unexpected happened. A call from a Texas state senator. Mr. Coleman, Senator Dolores Ray said, "I've seen your story, and I think it's time we changed some laws." That same month, she introduced the Landowner Protection Act, designed to stop HOAs from expanding outside their original zones, enforce stricter zoning laws, and criminalize fake easement filings. The bill gained traction. My story made headlines. Suddenly, the bully behind the curtain at Troy Madoxa was being publicly dragged through the mud. Real estate partners dropped him. His developments were frozen. He lost everything. As the sun set behind my repaired fences, Emily and I sat on our porch, hands intertwined. "You did it, Jack," she said. "No," I whispered. "We did it." But just as peace returned and the news crews packed up, a sleek black SUV pulled into the gravel outside my gate. It wasn't Troy. A man in a tailored gray suit stepped out. He raised a white envelope. "Mr. Coleman, you've been served." Another legal document, but this time, the sender was different. Federal Land Bureau of Development. The letter read, "Notice of Federal Interest in Land Acquisition Project 17A. You are within a designated zone for future federal infrastructure. Negotiations will begin immediately." I stood there in silence, then whispered, "Now it's the government." I held the envelope like it was a live grenade, reading the bold black ink as my heart hammered in my chest. Emily came to my side, brushing dirt off her jeans as she peered over my shoulder. "Jack, what is this?" I unfolded the letter. "You are hereby notified that your property falls within the projected development zone for the 17A Federal Infrastructure Corridor. This is not a compulsory acquisition at this time. However, initial discussions for voluntary sale and access coordination will begin within 30 days. I dropped the paper onto the porch floorboards and ran both hands through my hair. It was happening all over again. But this time, it wasn't Curtis. It wasn't Sandra. It wasn't even slick-talking Troy Maddox. It was the government. Emily's voice shook. "After all we've been through, a broken bar, they still want our land." I nodded slowly, already piecing it together. The 17A corridor or whatever it was must have been in the works for a long time, maybe even before Ridgeway Estates. It explained why Maddox was so confident, why Curtis acted like he owned the place. They were pawns in something bigger. I called our lawyer, Michelle Cortez. She didn't sound surprised. "Jack, I've been hearing whispers about this for months. The 17A project is supposed to be a high-speed transport corridor running across county lines. But here's the thing, they're targeting rural properties first. They think landowners won't fight back." I growled. Michelle sighed. "They haven't filed for eminent domain yet," Michelle told me. "That's important. Right now, it's just voluntary negotiations. You still have leverage." But I knew how the story went. First, they ask, then, they push, then, they take. We'd seen it all before. A landowner gets a friendly letter, then a surveyor shows up, then someone accidentally tears down your fence. Before you know it, you're boxed in, out of options, watching bulldozers roll across your pasture. Not this time. Emily and I spent the night digging, calling ranchers in other counties, comparing notes, watching old hearings online. The next morning, we held a press conference right on our ranch. A makeshift podium was set up near the still-scorched barn foundation. News crews lined up in the dirt, microphones and cameras ready. I stepped up, holding the letter in my hand. My name is Jack Coleman. This ranch has been in my family for nearly 100 years. Over the past year, I've been harassed, sued, stalked, burned out, and lied to by private developers and home members trying to steal what generations of honest work built. I paused, looking directly into every camera lens. And now, the federal government wants to try the same thing. Gasps rippled through the crowd as reporters scribbled furiously. This isn't just my fight anymore, I continued. They want this corridor to cut through every open piece of land they can find. But they forgot one thing: we're not just landowners. We're families, workers, veterans, Americans. And we don't give up. The crowd erupted in cheers. Later that day, #StandWithJack was trending online. By evening, over 100,000 people had signed a petition to protect rural landowners from forced federal development. Senators called, news anchors replayed my speech. I even received a letter of support from a group of veterans in Montana. But the legal battle wasn't over. The Land Bureau wasn't backing down. A week later, a new letter arrived. This one wasn't a request, it was a notice of intent to survey the land. Federal agents now had permission to step foot on my ranch, even without my consent, unless I got creative. With Michelle's help, we filed for a special agricultural heritage designation. We proved my land held historic and cultural value, hosting veteran therapy programs, school education, and horse rescue rehabilitation. It slowed the process, but it didn't stop it. So I called in a favor. Remember the alliance we built, a Residents Against HOA Overreach? It had grown to over 12,000 members across 5 states. I asked them all for one thing: come to my ranch. And they did. Trucks, campers, RVs, horseback riders, veterans, teachers, ranchers, students, and they lined the roads and stood shoulder to shoulder along my property line. When the federal agents arrived to survey, they were met by a human fence. No yelling, no violence, just people holding signs that read, "You can't steal roots. This land is our story. We stand with Jack." The federal team backed off. They sent a statement to the press: "We are reviewing our next steps." But we knew what that meant. They weren't going away. Emily had one last idea. "Let's make the land untouchable," she said. "How?" I asked. "We turn it into a non-profit conservancy, protected, registered, a place that can never be sold or seized." It took weeks and piles of paperwork, but with donations pouring in from around the country and help from a group of pro bono attorneys, we filed the final papers. The Coleman Family Ranch Conservancy. Now, our land was protected forever. No hoe, no developer, no government could touch it. The next morning, I stood by the rebuilt barn. Emmer grazed quietly nearby. Her leg healed. The wind was soft, the sunrise golden. Emily wrapped her arms around my waist. "It's finally over," she whispered. I nodded. We didn't just win, we protected something far bigger than ourselves. And if you're out there, facing an hoe threatening your peace, a developer knocking at your door, or a bully trying to take what's yours, remember this. You have a voice. Use it. You have rights. Defend them. You are never alone. This land, it's not just dirt. It's home.